of the previous panel was the assumption that the universe, if created by an intelligence, would have been created by a scientist. I would ask the question, wouldn't it rather have been created by an artist? This is what we'll be talking about in about 5 minutes. That continuum between art and science, where there is no separation, there is no division, it is completely arbitrary, and if we think in terms of binary existences, then the first place to destroy that delusion is with the assumption that the thinking mind thinks either in terms of data or in terms of emotion. Because the truth is, they are the same. And what this gentleman over here is going to prove, and what I am going to, as the buffoon, try to question, is the notion that cybersecurity, that information security, that information warfare, that data is a function of performance. With that, Dr. Gregory Carpenter.
Thanks, Michael. A few years ago, a very strange old man came up to me and said, I want you to do a debate. And he said, you're going to debate this guy, Michael Masucci. He's from New York. He's like you. You guys will argue. It'll be great. That evening, Win Schwartau put us together at a table and gave us alcohol. And we were to discuss fake information, the validity of fake information, the validity of real information, in a wonderful debate. This is another iteration on AI that we had done. But the original debate went for maybe, I don't know, 75, 80 minutes or something like that. And Michael and I didn't argue once. We politely presented our sides, and then we both agreed that we should argue with Win. And this is how we presented. So the idea of working with Michael came along pretty organically after that, and we worked on several things. This project that we're working on here is to discuss hacking as a performance art, but actually to also show you where we're at, where our concept is going, and how we want to develop this and bring this out into the community, because amongst you, there's hackers here. There's computer network defense people, right? The computer defense people, what do? They sit down, they have rules, they have regulations, they go down their lists, they follow everything and make sure the firewall settings are exactly this, that. And how does a hacker do it? That's the uniqueness that we're going to show. Hopefully, we'll be able to show here today. Quick outline. We went with the art stuff for the outline, so just bear with us. We'll get into like the technical talk stuff, and you'll go, oh, okay, yeah, that's what they were talking about a little bit. So don't worry. I'm one of those guys who was at NSA, so US code and the policy at the National Security Agency says that everything I talk about is my idea, I own it. I don't endorse NSA. NSA doesn't endorse me, and neither does the Central Security Service. So, show of hands, how many people knew we had a Central Security Service? About a half dozen. Wow. Okay. And with that,
tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in its petty pace, and all our yesterdays point fools the way to dusty death. Out! Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot like us two guys, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing.
Bravo, bravo. Now that is some amazing performance art, is it not?
No!
What?
That was not performance art. That was theater. 500-year-old words performed badly by an inept old guy standing on a stage in Davenport, Iowa. We don't really even know who wrote those words. The scholars argue to this day. No, that grisly and absolutely real picture is performance art. In the early 1970s, Chris Burden had himself crucified to the top of his car. Some people around the world call it a masterpiece in art. I leave it up to you to argue its validity, but it is so essentially, quintessentially different than theater. Arguably, the world's greatest living performance artist is a woman named Marina Abramovich. And not only do esoteric contemporary art freaks like me check out what she does, but the likes of rap icon Jay-Z, pop icon Lady Gaga study under Marina Abramovich. And Marina put it very, very, very clearly, the distinction between theater and performance art, when she said, and I quote, "To be a performance artist, you have to hate theater. Theater is fake. In theater, the knives are fake, the blood is fake, and the emotions are fake. Performance art is quite the opposite. The knives are real. The blood is real. And the emotions are real." We are going to postulate that the world you navigate, the world you mitigate, the world you try to both enhance as well as restrict is much closer to performance art, despite the words you use like scripting. We would argue that in order for you to take your profession to the next level, you need to start talking more to artists. You need to incorporate the arts-based practices that takes as a given the actualization of data, the taking of data and making it either a grotesque, hateful statement or a profound, transcendent statement, depending on how you interpret what Chris Burden did. So we are going to argue back and forth, not with each other, with ourselves, as to how to improve the way data is performed.
Manipulating, influencing emotions, and therefore action is at the core of both hacking and performance art.
These are arguably among some of the largest images human beings have ever made. They are data. They are digital animated projections, all created by my late partner, Kate Johnson, Win Schwartau, and Greg New, who passed away a little over 3 years ago. Kate was influenced by performance art, and she took your data, she took the genius of your world, the ability to manipulate zeros and ones, and turned it into site-specific, immersive, emotional experiences. And she did it with relatively simple equipment. One of the arguments we would make is that in the performance aspect of hacking, the hackers did not need the tools of James Cameron or Steven Spielberg or George Lucas. They used laptops. They used cell phones. They used simple online experience connections. They use the tools of the people, but in operatic ways, to the level of performance, to the levels beyond simply being a code monkey or being a script kiddie. They do it to the level of an art.
Technology and art. I first saw this picture here of the angel and the man reaching out to her, and I thought, my God, that is just an amazing piece. I don't know how you did that, but I do know that if we can represent the activities of a hacker in this way, we'll have achieved something that Kate had asked us to work on ourselves, but something that we could give to the community and let you see what it is you are creating in a way that you've never thought possible.
One of the false memes that predicates a lot of academia and a lot of the delusional barrier between art and tech is that there was ever a separation between art and tech. Try building the world's largest statue without a little bit of knowledge of math, a little bit of knowledge of engineering, even geology. Try doing a modern opera without light, without all of the synchronizations that light is now done in theaters, MIDI, SMPTE. There has never been a time when art and science were not very passionate lovers. And the more the technology world understands the tool sets articulated and explored in the art world, the sooner we can work together to understand the behavior of those artists, both malicious and beneficial, who are using the tools you have mastered.
The tools of today are not different from the tools that we saw in ancient Egypt and other places around the world. Sure, they've changed a bit. We use VR goggles now, and we create generative art out of algorithms, the intersection of computer-generated data and human data. There's a different way of looking at art, taking it to the next level, taking it down a road that we've gone before. We've done this, we've seen this before. When Michelangelo painted the Sistine Chapel, Michael, the brushes he used, were they just pulled out of a dog and stuck on a stick?
Absolutely not. And dare I would say today, try making a paintbrush without the mitigation of a computer. From the forestry that grew the tree, to the petrochemical technologies that made the paint, to the metallurgy that make the tiny little band, show me one aspect of traditional media, a euphemism if there ever was one, that is not digital. The absolute integration between old and new in arts-based practices has been completely synthesized again with an understanding of your world. And I argue, and I won't speak for Greg, but he may agree, but the more you understand my world, the more we can take these separate bodies of knowledge into a more integrated and therefore more humanly beneficial state, where we can understand the philosophical attributes of both of our communities and use them in ways that will seed each other better.
In medicine, we see the use of an interdisciplinary team to treat people nowadays, don't we? You see that more and more often. Not only do you have the psychiatrist, you have by themselves or with a social worker to deal with an issue, you have the allergist, you have the internal medicine, you have the neurologist. They all work on a team together. In medicine, it's been identified that what we want to find, what we're searching for, is not only in the molecular communication system in the body. It's not only specifically in the neurological system. It's throughout the body. Everything is connected in one way or another. In the same way, I asked a computer to create ancient computer hackers and what they would have looked like just a few years ago. This is generative art. This is what we were just talking about. It's something new. It looks pretty refined. It's not too bad. But how can we do better? We make that interdisciplinary team. We add people. We add the human element, the human input into the equation to take it to the next level.
A blend. Creativity. Human achievement. For me, any major science project that does not incorporate a lead artist is imperfect, and likewise, any major art project that does not incorporate a lead scientist is missing the point. The point that together, the vocabularies enhancing each other, the knowledge bases enhancing each other, blend as they always have. And I would dare anyone to come up with an art form that has not always been completely integrated in technologies.
And as we take the technology and we apply it, and we add that human element to it, we can put things into our art that can't be captured in a traditional manner. Spontaneity, improvisation, interpretation of interaction with another person, and with data output from a system itself. That's what we're talking about when we're really talking about putting technology together with art. Art comes from technology, but technology comes from art too.
So I tried to answer my own question, and I really tried to come up with art that did not involve technology. And I only came up with 3. Now, bear in mind, in 2 of them, I am going to slightly contradict myself because they are wearing clothes, and clothes are a technology. But I came up with dancing barefoot because shoes are a technology, on the ground because a stage is technology, a cappella singing, again without a microphone or without a stage or without lights because that's technology, or making music by hand clapping. What else? No. One of the ultimate killer apps of technology has always been what we call art. Say it. Can you?
I can't hear.
We can't hear you, sorry. See, we need amplification to hear you. Sorry, I'm sure you came up with one. I'm sure there are others.
So the interesting part of showing this art in this way is that we had to use technology to do it. Because the pictures we generated were generated on the computer, and we're presenting it to you through technology itself.
Now, the great writer William Burroughs said language is a virus. He actually said it was a virus from outer space, but we'll leave the UAP part out of this for the moment. Language is a virus, and its imperfection is probably the cause for more of our separateness, more of our divisions, more of our dis-ease as a society and a species. But language and data, because data is a language, as you would be the first to tell me, can be very imperfect. Almost 10 years ago, for the 35th anniversary of the crazy video art group that I'm part of, the city of West Hollywood and USC threw a 3-month celebration of our history. And for the finale, we did a performance art piece in a park in West Hollywood, California, where we had our humble beginnings. And we hoisted a huge balloon up into the sky so people could see projections from all over. We had, you can't see it in the dark, but a live dance company down here. And these digital animations were live puppeted avatars coming from The Hague who were watching our live dancers in West Hollywood on a phone and immediately responding with very little latency in real time to dance with the live dancers. Now, we didn't get an MC to stand up in the park and say, "You are going to see live digitally animated avatars coming from The Hague." We put it in a program, in the printed form on a piece of paper, in a post-literate world. In a world where people took their nice little catalog and stuffed it in their purses and didn't read it. So most of the people didn't know that they were watching a technological marvel that would still be an unusual experience today, 9 years later. So language failed us, and we failed language by not getting some buffoon like me to stand up with a microphone and say, "You're going to see a technological marvel. You are going to see data streamed from all the way from Europe live as it watches data being streamed all the way from America to Europe." By not saying that, people missed the whole point of the performance. They still liked it very much. Nice, pretty pictures, beautiful bodies dancing, doing all kinds of wonderful stuff. But they didn't get the marriage between the art and the science. Another problem, unfortunately, in the old days, in the early days of the adoptions of personal computers and then Web 1.0, you would hear a term, the digital divide. The fact of the matter is we live in a world where some people have way more resources than a lot of other people. And that technological division, the access of amazing tools to few, and the barrier to access to so many, to this day, is one of the major stumbling blocks between getting the information on a global scale. Among many hats I wear is I participate in a pro bono organization called the Global Creative Commons, and they deal with a lot of people in Africa. And we were talking on Zoom to leaders from several African nations, and we were asking each other what we need. And one gentleman said, "A laptop and an iPhone." And I said, "Oh, for you?" He said, "No, for my entire village." So as we take for granted all of the computing power we have got to be cognizant to the fact that there are entire communities that together lust about allocating for themselves a laptop and an iPhone with an internet connection. But we can go small. The lowly Betamax, the younger people in this audience have certainly never used one, may not even know what it is. Circa 1979. In 1970, Betamax? Right. And that's good, because it means we are progressing technologically.
Let the record show Abby does not know what a Betamax is. Thank you.
And not to be an ageist, but Abby, you're 16? Okay. So, I'm a few years older than you. In 1979, my colleague, a man named John Doerr, was locked out of both the contemporary art world and Hollywood. But he got the resources together by today's money, maybe about $3,000, to buy the first home VCR, video cassette recorder. You put a tape in a machine, you hit play, and you record, by today's standards, very primitive pictures and sounds. That thing became a treasure for an entire community in West Hollywood, California. He himself made 3 feature-length films on that home Betamax, one of which showed at the Pompidou Museum in Paris. But he loaned it to his friends. And they created an art movement with the lowest possible tech. So when we explore that incestuous relationship between art and tech, we have to understand it's great if you've got super servers and incredible state-of-the-art stuff, but you can make a revolution with the lowest tech.
Tech's been around a lot longer than we like to think about. The first cave paintings show up 50,000 years ago. Cuneiform, the writing, 3,500 BC is the first instances we have of Sumerian writings like that. Tech in simple ways speaks to us in ways that we're still learning about, we're still trying to figure out and understand. Stained glass came about in the 10th century. Anything that's happened before we were born might as well be ancient history to us and lost, because we don't know when it came about. We don't know when it was introduced or how it changed civilization. Do you realize that the first tea in England was only introduced in 1650? You thought it was there forever, didn't you? Most people do. They don't understand. We are lost in our minds because, like we were talking about in the panel before, our perception of what we want to deal with in our mind or where we think we are is completely separated from what reality is in many ways.
We also have to remember that history far more often gets forgotten than codified. In my own world of the pretentious world of contemporary art, I often say history is the art of forgetting. What we have forgotten is far more important than what we seem to remember. Today, we are all very, very used to streaming services, pick your poison, Zoom, Skype. But the experiments from that actually stemmed from the art world. So in 1990, Ulysses Jenkins hooked up a very crude device called a picture phone, which you could buy for, in 1990s money, $200 at your local electronics store. You hooked it up over the phone lines, for those of you old enough to remember phone lines, and somebody on the other end could see your picture and sound. I myself began experimenting with what's now called telepresence in 1987, hooking up Arthur C. Clarke, the science fiction writer, in Sri Lanka with West Hollywood, California. Before me, in the 1970s, a group called Electronic Cafe International were using NASA satellites to do what we now do together. Many of the authorships that are of the technology world now were experimented with and, dare I say, envisioned by artists.
We go through artistic revolutions, and we don't know they're there because we're in it, we're part of it. We're in the moment. We're experiencing it as it happens. Right now, we're going through a tremendous technological increase with AI, machine learning, VR, XR, and Wynn would say the metaverse, whatever that is. But that's where we're going. Some of my work has gone into looking at and examining and trying to understand how people physiologically are actually part of that technology that's moving forward at this moment. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. But to understand that we're at a point in history where we've been before. Is it different? Yeah. Is the technology more advanced? Well, from cave paintings up to now, we're moving forward, I would have to say, with technological developments. Technology and art are so tied together. Let's go back to the introduction of tea for just a second. Okay? Basic porcelain products had been produced for hundreds of years at that point. But when tea was introduced into England, it became more of a formalized process in England. That drove technological research into finer porcelains created for the British aristocracy to enjoy high tea. And in turn, that drove more technologies into more different research areas that changed other aspects of society. And this is where technology takes us. But the interaction of art and technology is so much more powerful. Tea was just tea to people who drank it before the British got it. But once the British got it, well, the aristocracy got it, it became an art.
So how does this relate to you? Rather long intro. Half of the time we've spent setting the stage, to use a theatrical term. What is that stage? That stage is in your world. And it involves the beginnings of experiments that Greg and I have begun to contemplate as to how to use the skills of both of our worlds to better enhance an understanding of cybersecurity and more broadly, an understanding of data, and how ultimately that can also be an aesthetic experience as a happy byproduct. So Greg is going to do a lot more of the talking for the remainder.
So we have an intermission here for a minute. If you have bourbon, please just take the time to get yourself a drink. Don't let us get in your way. So, Hacker's Luminary. It's a concept that Michael and I came up with not that long ago. These pictures here, by the way, is actually a real person, somebody that works with Michael quite often. Just a different aspect of showing here the digital, the AI, and a physiological aspect mixed with body painting and different types of lighting. The hacker's luminary project is to show or to highlight the hacker, what the hackers do, how they do it. Get people to understand, either at a rudimentary or a very high level based on your technological background, of what it means to initiate a DDoS. What it means if you're trying to do some other function. What does that look like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? If I could take someone and sit them down and just collect some data, maybe I'll have the chance to use the technology that's available to me today to introduce something that we've never seen before.
I'd like to just introduce Alina Kalinovskaya. Alina, originally from Belarus. As you know, Belarus is in a state of conflict, to put it mildly. Alina is an attorney from Belarus, a civil rights advocate, and perhaps not exactly in favor of the current political system there. Alina can't go home. Alina could not go home to see and say goodbye to her father dying of COVID. Alina cannot go visit her mother. But perhaps an art project can be made where we can bring these worlds closer together. And by the art side, studying a performance art way to communicate more hyper-realistically, data can be generated that can access and enhance an understanding of the behavioral aspects of performance.
Justin, on the side, so this is actually Alina putting herself into the artwork itself. When I see her next, I have to ask her the question, not why the red outfit, but why she has a colander and strainers flying at her. That didn't register with me. I was thinking of like some other things. Maybe they were like, razors are coming out or something, and she's like a superhero. But no, their colanders like, to strain spaghetti. So, the ballet of the data and the processing, what happens? What do we want to do? Where do we want to go with this? What we're looking to do, as I mentioned before, is set up an environment where I can collect a whole bunch of data. The data, we want it to be unique to the individual. So it would be one person sitting down, identifying a specific task that we want that person to do. And we take what they're doing and collect all of the data, not only like the latency and the keystrokes. Sure, we could do that with any sets of tools that we have right now, but we want all of the haptic information. I want the environmental information. I want to set up an ambient environment that I can control and collect everything that's happening in that room with that person performing that task. I want to measure the computer. I want to check the heat levels. I want to see how much memory is being processed at any one time. I want to do load bearing. I want to collect as much information about that person and their interaction with the technology itself, because that is something that gives me a unique fingerprint of who that person is and their performance itself. And like we said before, hacking is performance art. You're not using a script. You're not checking the block. Last year, Chris Roberts was up here and he gave a fabulous talk. Check the block. If you were here last year, you saw it. What's the first thing? I'm a CSO, okay? I'm not a CISO, thank God, right? But what does a CISO need to have done? Well, he needs to have the blocks checked. That's all the CISOs do in many offices these days. Check the block. You got an ATO? Got an ATO. All right. Got your security plan? 250 pages. Great. Hackers don't care, but that's okay. I got it. And that paperwork will save me. Okay? We don't want that check the block mentality. We want to collect everything about that person to get a complete understanding. I would put a halo on and measure EEG waves, an aspect that has not been covered before in research. You want to about this or anything? Okay, that's fine. What does it look like? What do we make this ballet, this dance, this piece of artwork, what do we make it look like? We haven't worked out a final performance art piece of what we want it to look like, but I can tell you a general representation of what we've thought of. We have thought of an immersive experience where you could walk into that room where that person has, not necessarily the same room, but a room that we've set up that would actually regenerate all of the energy of that person, all of the activity of that person, and transpose the keystrokes into light, the energy level into sound. The EEG waves would blend together and come out as a hologram on the other end. It could be an ocean of a continuous experience, like we were talking about before. When you look through the Hubble, what do you see? You see these amazing arrays of galaxies and universes. So we're not quite on the output yet, but we have thought about a few different ways of doing this.
And obviously, as the theme of this year's conference, understandably, is AI, we are not unaware of the implications of how machine learning will affect, perhaps enhance, or to use the ultimate PR euphemism of all time, hallucination, code word mistake. We are not unaware that we can perhaps be augmented in data analysis or mistaken and misled by the data.
So one of the things we didn't want to do was regenerate something that happened to humanity a number of years ago. If you're around for this, you painfully lived through this moment with everyone else who was new to the internet. If you don't know what this is, it's all right. I'm going to take a moment just to introduce you so you know why you wanted to miss it in the first place. This is, it's computer generated. We're going to try to run it here and see how this works. Oh, I don't think the...
Looks good.
It didn't go through. Okay, so...
Data at work.
When he copied it, it didn't go through. So I'll give you the... I'm going to save you some horrible pain. So in 1998, easy, Glenn. In 1998, we went down the road of performance art in many new ways that we had never done before, because we had this new thing that everybody was latching onto, the internet, and kids got it, and they saw things, and we had to go, whoa, kids can't see that. This is one of those things that they shouldn't have seen. This was called the hamster dance song. People are gasping for, yes, I told you it was time to drink the bourbon. The hamster dance was probably one of the most violently upsetting pieces of performance art that ever hit the internet, with an equally obnoxious audio that went with it. Feel free to Google on your own time after my hearing aids have been turned down. Damn. This was just something we didn't want to do. Thank God we don't have the audio for this right now. Yeah, it didn't go through. Nope.
That looks good.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Moving on. But what we did want to do was create something that would be completely immersive. So if we're using a combination of like AR, VR, XR, we also want you to be able to, like in a gaming scenario, to be able to walk around the room and experience the different aspects of what that hacker was doing at that time. Like I said, this is like a digital fingerprint of who somebody is and what they can do. And as we measure it against a baseline, we're able to identify efficiencies. We pull out the best practices, and we have someone perform a task against best practices, and we measure that to get the delta. We're going to see that there is a difference. Not everybody's going to do something exactly the same, number one. Number two, not everybody's going to do something that's as perfect as what we believe the best practice to be. But this is also something that can be informative back to us on a technical side or a practical side, I would say, in that it would help inform us if our best practice is actually a best practice, or if we're mistaken. To go back to the discussion of models, is the model correct? Is what we're doing correct?
So they said there was going to be no math. Many of you know what this means. I have no idea what this means, but I know it adds up to 42, and I know what that means. And that concept, which is so endeared in this community and many, many other technical communities, again, I would gently remind, comes from literature, which is an art form. And many of the inspirational things that have inspired the world of science, just as science inspires the artist has very, 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 very often inspired certainly the 20th century and the 19th century. And the impact of science fiction can in no way be overstated in terms of its impact on our world.
So to go forward, we've talked about macro type data collection. I'm going to take it one step further, like I alluded to earlier, and we're going to talk about submolecular data collection and how to integrate that into our picture of who a hacker is, what we can show the community that they're doing, provide their piece of performance art while identifying efficiencies and shortcomings, or where they need to do better in their own efforts. Here is just a very basic chart. I think people might be familiar with this a little bit. Shouldn't be anything that nobody knows about here, I mean, I hope. Okay? But the application for that comes down into some of the research that I'm doing at the submolecular level and with RNA and DNA. The easiest way to explain how I would want to have something shared, artistically shared, and linked to a person would be looking at the RNA. The nucleic acid bases, each of them by themselves can be encoded because we can write data into DNA now, right? We have the CRISPR technologies, the Cas9 technologies, where we introduce a vector with manipulated RNA into a human, and in that way, that RNA will be written into your DNA. So a genetic mutation might be removed and removed out of your family for future generations. On the other hand, we could write something in there that would help uniquely identify who you are and would help identify or expand on your artistic ability by writing in something into your DNA that would come out through the performance art aspect. Measuring DNA and measuring genetic expression is not as easy. And that's why this is in the future aspect of where we want to go with the project. But it includes us looking at how your genes identify who you are as part of our performance art aspect. Using the technologies that we have and then taking them the next step, the new paintbrush, the new canvas, the new ceramic, the new glaze.
So, what if this couldn't work? What if more and more, as the rule rather than the exception, we can fully access these seemingly different information gathering and information disseminating technologies, techniques, paradigms, belief systems, styles, genres, fill in the blanks, that have been evolving simultaneously for tens of thousands of years. What if we can better use each other's skills? What if I, as an artist who takes as a given that I am going to use massive projector systems, computing systems, editing systems, lighting systems, sound generating systems, systems imagined in your world, what if I can have a more direct communication with you and you can have more direct communication with those dreamers who ask what if in a different way? Can we do this better together?
Dr. Johnson mentioned before, cartoon references are great, so we had to go grab one to make sure we got it in here so we didn't get left out. But what we're looking at doing is that next renaissance. It's that next artistic, technical renaissance, somewhere where we haven't gone before, something we haven't done before. The human-machine interface right now allows us to take a prosthetic arm and hook it up to the neurological system. You have sensory nerve functioning, meaning you can touch things and you can feel it. It generates that feeling and it sends it back into the central nervous system and we go, ow, that's hot. But it's a prosthetic arm. It's not even you. But we're talking about taking it one step, 2 steps, 5 steps further and actually linking it in to how your body explains who you are, to what you're doing, to the technology, and putting that all together and creating something that's never been done before. That's what we're looking at doing.
No small task. Now, Dr. Gregory Carpenter, epidemiologist, computer scientist, cybersecurity expert, all kinds of other stuff.
Who?
The sidekick.
Got it.
The man giving this presentation and giving this vision had to tell me, the lowly art guy, that this means finale. The end of this song and dance, buffoon versus scholar, walk dance, performance art piece. The fact that I don't know, that says finale, is something we must all remember. How we are all communicating in silos, how we are all communicating in tiny little communities, and even the slightest variant, because at least I know that's a 0, that's a 1, I know that much, but I don't know your language. And quite possibly you don't know mine. And we are of the same society. And the more we understand that one of our biggest challenges in all areas of life, including cybersecurity, is communication, is building better language bridges, we will understand that many of those answers already exist in worlds like painting, in worlds like dance, in worlds like music, in worlds that have circumvented words for as long as we have been the human species.
We've taken up a lot of your time today, and we appreciate that you've sat here and listened to us through this. This is a monumental task of data collection, coordination, and interdisciplinary teamwork. We know that. We realize that. I am not a molecular biologist, but I do need one. And to that end, we do need people that will be available in the future to help us, to work with us. I need a hacker to sit down so I can hook up really cool tools and measure stuff. Data scientists and other folks like that. If you have skills like that, if you have or know of people who'd be interested, we would love to talk to folks to try to help us move this forward even more. We've started, we're going down the road, but to get to the point where we're integrating genetic expression with hacker functionality in a third or possibly fourth dimensional experience is something that is beyond what we can provide right now with the resources we have. So with that, I'd like to thank you. If anybody has any questions that are not too hard, we would be happy to throw them over to Michael and let him answer them for you.
Well, thank you for putting up with us.
Yeah. Good.
Oh, we do got a question.
Hi, can you hear me well?
I can hear you now.
So this representation that you're looking to create, I'm sure it's going to look different based on differing experience levels for the hacker that you're talking about. Are you looking for diverse experience levels, or how is that?
Are we looking for diverse experience levels? At this point, it doesn't matter. I need people who can perform a basic function, right? If I want to get you on this box, I want you to be able to go in and like map a drive, something like that. We need to actually have people do simple tasks, so as we build out, we have a complete library. Our model gets stronger, and we can move to more complex tasks after that.
And people willing to ask what if. People to challenge the boundaries that we're predetermining, because those boundaries are fungible. Those boundaries are fluid. This is an idea that can evolve into a kind of think tank project, a kind of project where all kinds of minds can dabble, can peek in once in a while, can be very involved. It's, again, to use an art tool term, it's a blank canvas. But it's a canvas that Dr. Carpenter has a vision to draw on. And we want it to be a collaborative drawing. I think we're good.
Okay.
Thank you so
Well,
much for
thank you
putting
very
up
much.
with us.